Trina. How are you,
Hello,
Trina? How are you?
I am very well. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Where are you sitting right now? In India, I suppose, right?
Ah, it is, and in a city called Kota, which is in Rajasthan.
Amazing. And what brings you there?
Ah, so you will hear about Kranti in a bit, of course. But I'm here in Kota visiting an organization that's a maker space for young girls from marginalized communities. So they learn like woodwork, metalwork, but also coding and hacking. And I hope to be able to bring Kranti's leadership curriculum to the girls in the organization here in Kota, which is what I'm here to do. But of course, you'll hear about Kranti and the curriculum that I'm talking about in a minute, so you won't feel totally
Amazing.
lost.
So it's interesting. Nice to meet you formally. I've heard so much about the work that you and Bani and what Robin are doing at Kranti, and I've heard about Kranti from two sources. One is my dear friend Dipti Mehta, who is an amazing artist. Who I know that you know her. Dipti is originally from Mumbai, Bombay, and the first time I heard about Kranti was through her amazing award-winning show called Honor: The Confessions of a Mumbai Courtesan. I have sat in the front row of so many of Dipti's showings and cried, and the story inspired me a lot to really want to unpack how we deal with this very difficult subject of human trafficking. And specifically for me, it's a story very close to my heart as it concerns the violation of children's bodies by adults, by society, right? So when Ravi, our friend Ravi, who from Save the Child, also brought up Kranti as being an important partner for Save the Child, I thought that Sybil and I thought that it's a very auspicious coming together of two organizations in partnership for this year. I know that you know a little bit about us, but the reason why I think we are speaking today is also because in 2022, we are dedicating the proceeds from every salon that we do towards a cause that affects children. It's called the 2022 Children Interrupted Fund. And Kranti is our first nominated beneficiary, and we are so honored to be in partnership with you and your co-founders because the work that you do has a kind of gravity that I'm not even able to hold my hands around or fathom. But your work is inspiring. So I thank you for being here today while you're on the road, to talk to us.
I got a job after college with an organization that was working in the red light area in Calcutta, which is called Kalighat. It's one of the oldest and largest red light areas in Asia. And I mean, basically, I turned 18 and I was just looking for a job. And I got a job with this NGO teaching the children of sex workers. And interestingly, like later I found out I got this job because they had a really difficult time finding people who were willing to walk into a red light area every day and do that job. So, which is why they were like, okay, fine, we'll just hire like this undergrad student because they couldn't find anyone else to do it. But as much as I hate cliches, I have to say that my time working in Kalighat was life changing, right? That's the cliche. But I think what it really showed me, like growing up in a middle class family, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, like we all have gone down in cars, down those streets where the sex workers stand, right? We all know in our
Yeah.
cities where that street is. And every time we pass it, we look the other way. Um, and, so we either look at them with sympathy or like, they're criminals, like they did something wrong, shameful, etc. But I think when I was working in the red light area, I saw these women as strong, independent women working as hard as anybody else I knew in my family to support their families. I saw the incredible potential in the children, in these women, what strong women they are. And sort of, I finished my time in Kalighat with this sort of realization of this potential, but I wasn't sure what to do about it. So I went to do a master's in social work. The institutionalized education part of it was not so fun, but the great part was that during my master's is when I ended up meeting Robin and Bani, who were to be my future co-founders. And these two women also have incredible stories of their own. You
When
know a
was
little bit
this,
of this
Trina?
from.
When did you all? When did the three of you come together?
So I was in university doing my master's in Bangalore,
Okay.
and Robin was traveling in Bangalore, and that's how we met. She came for like a rural exposure program I had organized in my university, and basically Robin also has an incredible story. She joined the U.S. She's Indian American. Joined the U.S. Air Force when she was 17 to pay for college, and she's been serving in the military for many years. But she is gay, and so when she came out, the military fired her under "Don't Ask, Don't Tell,"
Yeah.
and Obama only repealed it after. This was before Obama repealed it. So, and she was a big LGBTQI activist. If you Google her still, you find all these articles on the internet. So, like Robin came from a very strong feminist activist background, felt very strongly about. She had been visiting multiple anti-trafficking organizations across India as well. Bani, the third co-founder, her name is Bani, but in India she's older than me, so I call her Bani. And I have to clarify that because sometimes people just think her name is Bani because I don't clarify. Her name is Bani. And so Bani, another incredible woman, she moved from West Bengal to Bombay at a very early age. She had early marriage. She had a baby at an early age, but her husband abandoned. She was a single mother, also working in an anti-trafficking organization in Bombay. The three of us felt very similarly that there was a gap in this space, which is basically that there was no investment in the long-term potential of girls and women from the red light area. What I mean by that is like you'll be familiar with this. Like most of the time when we talk about rehabilitation for women in India and a little bit globally as well, we are talking like make pickle, make poppers, sit stitch bags, beauty parlor, training, things like that, right? And there's nothing wrong with making pickle if that's what a woman really wants to do. But we felt like there was something wrong in telling someone that your only other option than sex work is making pickles. So we thought a lot about what is the root cause of trafficking, right? Is it poverty? But poor families are sex trafficking their daughters, not sons, right? So it's not poverty. It is the fact that a woman is seen as a liability and a man as an asset, right? And that's the perception we have to change. That is the root cause, right? And we're not doing anyone a service by having hundreds and thousands of women make pickles and make candles because we're not changing that perception of them being a liability. We're not showing them as an asset to society. And of course, I'll talk about the path to it now, but even the little you know about Kranti and the stories of our girls and what they're doing, you'll see that what our focus is on establishing these girls and their case studies and stories that show that these girls are assets.
So this brings me to the next question, right? What is it about your particular cycle of transformation as you take in women and daughters of sex workers?
Yeah.
What is different about the Kranti's leadership cycle of transformation?
Right. So before I tell you exactly, answer that question exactly, I have to tell you where it came from because it's a
Okay.
beautiful story because our vision and all the work we do really came from the girls. So, so when we first started Kranti, we just said, okay, Kranti is going to be a space where these girls can come and choose to do and be whatever they want to do and be. And it is our job to find them the opportunities and the path to get there, right? So they can say, I want to be a teacher, I want to be I want to be an entrepreneur, whatever, and we'll find them the right kind of education and opportunities to do that. But when we started asking the girls, what do you want to do? They would always say that, I want to be a teacher, but I want to teach the children of sex workers because no one admits us in school. Or I want to be a therapist for children who face sexual abuse because when I faced sexual abuse, I had no support. And so when we heard all of them say that is when we realized that we can do much more than just be the place to give them opportunities, right? When we heard that, we realized that these girls are positioned to be the best future leaders who go back to their communities and solve the problems that they grew up facing, right? Because they already have a deep understanding of these social problems. and the social structures. They have the trust of the community, and they're very passionate about going back and giving back to their communities. So if we can just build the one missing piece of leadership in them, then these girls are our best bet for being our future leaders.
How
And therefore I say that idea really came from them, because they told us as many words, and so then what we do then, what the path to this is, um, so we have a safe home in Mumbai where the girls come and they stay, and the first thing we focus on is health and well-being. So many of the girls come with, they have, we have a couple of HIV positive women or other non-communicable diseases like bone TB, and some of the, basically because they have no compliance to medication is a real problem when you're growing up in the red light area, even if it's free from the government, right? So non-compliance over time has made some diseases drug resistant, etc., etc. So there's some physical illnesses to deal with. Um, uh, for example, like eardrum reconstructions, another thing we do very commonly, because if someone's been hit, basically the eardrum is one of the first things to, it easily bursts. So the healthcare is the first thing we take care of, and then mental health, because post-traumatic stress disorder is the least of the mental health issues we are dealing with. We have some girls with much more severe mental illnesses as well, like dissociative identity disorder, because of the severe trauma they've been through. So when the girls come to us, they start seeing a therapist one-on-one weekly, mandatorily, because we realized very early on that, unless we can build a stable emotional base, self-esteem, and they have healed, we can't build education or anything else on top of that, unless if a girl is still cutting herself. I mean, cutting themselves is a very common problem, by the way. I can't be sending her to school and say study, etc., right?
It brings me
So
back
there's
to
the
the
one.
Maslow's pyramid, right? Like if you think of the Abraham,
Absolutely.
right? You're talking about physical security,
Absolutely.
psychological security, mental at the
Yeah,
bottom, and then you go into the sense of, do I belong in this society? Do I belong to this
absolutely.
community? And then you're going into like higher order needs, and education
Yeah.
like is further up.
Hmm.
Restitution is for, I mean, like, rehabilitation is further up in the pyramid. Yeah.
Right. And the top level self actualization, we believe that these girls, when they, really are able to be these leaders in their communities, that is self actualization for them.
It is.
If we are to go philosophical, it is.
I love
So
that.
I mean,
I love that.
absolutely. So yeah, so then going back, so then they not only do one-on-one therapy, but over time, like they do art therapy, music therapy, body movement, whatever works for them, right? They find it over time by trying different things. And every morning at Kranti in the morning, we start with yoga and meditation. So there's basically a big focus on well-being, and it's sort of like the culture of the home. So that's the first thing we do, and then there's of course mainstream education. So our girls go to many mainstream schools and colleges. They have scholarships, some other tuition fees we raise. But sometimes there's a girl where the age gap and the learning level is very
Yep.
broad, right? So like there's a 14-year-old girl who's never been to school before, which does happen. I
Yeah.
can't make her sit in a class one classroom, right? In which case we homeschool them. And I don't know if you're familiar with the National Indian Open Schooling System. It's basically like a board under which they can take their exams if they're homeschooled. It's
I
called the
know.
National Indian Open Schooling System. So they take the exams under that, and usually by either 11th class 11 or college, we can integrate them into the education, in the mainstream education system. So we have girls going to boarding schools across India, colleges in Delhi, Hyderabad. We have three of our girls studying in college in the US that Ravi must have mentioned to you, I'm sure. One of our girls is studying in Pisa in Italy.
This isn't really impressive. So you said the first what part is building and rebuilding the culture of home and safety. Then you move
Yeah,
into rehabilitation,
mental health,
education,
well-being,
mental health well-being, and then you go into education.
education.
Start going
And
outward
then,
facing. Yep.
correct, right? Like heal the inside first, and then we can build skills on top. Next big program, although I hate breaking it down into these things, but for ease of conversation, it's what we call our magic sauce, really. It's Kranti's leadership curriculum. We just call it Kranti School. And this curriculum has two main parts. The first part is learning about social justice issues. So where we learn about caste, gender stereotypes, body image, Black Lives Matters, LGBTQI issues, you name it. And we keep updating the curriculum. It's like when Black Lives Matter happened, we added a module on it to keep it relevant. And the second part of the curriculum is leadership skills. So like critical thinking, creative problem solving, conflict resolution, teamwork, etc. And we believe that it is really this curriculum, I mean, everything, of course, together, but this curriculum which really transforms them into the social change leaders, really enables them and supports them to play that role, to see that for themselves. And so, I mean, I think the next part already, which is the stories of many of our girls and what they're doing. So, many of our girls, a couple of our girls are special educators for children with special needs. They all chose what to do based on their passion. One of our girls is a music therapist, like a drum circle facilitator for young people living in slums of Mumbai, working on gender awareness with them, but using drum circles and music therapy.
Oh, beautiful.
Absolutely, she's amazing. A couple of our girls are very interested in animal rights, so they work at animal care shelters. One of our girls, interestingly, was brought up by a transgender sex worker. So she really wanted to work for the transgender community, and she's an artist. So she works with the transgender community to paint like giant wall murals, and she's done this all across India. So not only does it give the transgender population a dignified income by making the art, but also it shows more trans faces in public art to normalize it, right? Which we don't see trans faces in public art otherwise.
I had a question on the names as well. I was on your website and you call them Krantikaris. Now, for
Sure.
those who are not from India,
Yes.
can you give a little bit of a basis, an explanation of the root of the name as well? What does it mean?
Sure. So Kranti means revolution in Hindi, and Krantikaris, which is what we call our girls, means revolutionaries. And the reason we chose that name is because we truly believe that Kranti is bringing a revolution in gender perspectives, in what we think women are capable of, especially in what we think a girl who is trafficked underage is capable of, which is probably like bottom of the rung in our society amongst all kinds of marginalization, right? You think about the story of any Krantikari, a 9-year-old girl who was trafficked, had an abortion at 10, and now she's doing her master's in psychology in PISA. Like, if that's not a revolutionary, what is,
That is a revolution. That's a human revolution.
Yeah.
It is the cycle of life within like within one life cycle, actually. I mean, that's incredible. The last thing is, if you had one thing to ask the world on how we can help you advance your mission this year, what are the different ways in which people can contribute towards your cause? Obviously, there's a website which we'll include the link of. Is there anything else that also goes towards making your organization a thriving organization besides financial donations?
What I have is really a personal ask for each person to do on their own, which is, when we see, this is not just about girls who've been trafficked, right? When we see anyone who's marginalized in any way, right? It can be a person living with a disability, it can be a person growing up in a difficult neighborhood. When we see this person, in the best case situation, we think, how can we give them some services? Right? So like if a person with a disability, we're like, okay, is this building accessible? How can we make sure this person with a disability gets education and a job, right? Which is all great. That's where our society is today. That's the best end of it. But I envision a society where we see a person with a disability, where we meet a person who grew up in a difficult neighborhood, and we think this could be the person to really solve some problem for the community of people with disability. This could be a person to really have the solution to how to make neighborhoods safer, right? And we invest in these people like that. And so I think my ask from people is just, when you see that person next time, like, try and think of their potential as this and just see how much that changes. That entirely changes how we interact with that person, the relationship we want to build, And I think if just all of us thought that way, that would be revolution enough.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. The potential for the outliers and the outsiders and those on the fringes to be the change makers of the world, to expand our own perspective on what it takes to create a world and make a world. Is these outsider experiences. I love it.
Absolutely.